So 2024 did not go the way that Mississippi State wanted it to go. All right, you went 2-10. You were last in just about every metric in the SEC. Uh, you your scoring margin, you were almost minus 14 on average, minus 13 and a half average. You got blown out by Toledo early in the season. And honestly, CD, you look at Mississippi State's schedule and you're like, okay, aside from like a couple of, out of conference games you feel pretty good about winning, like this SEC schedule is pretty brutal in terms of the home away splits. The games that you would find winnable normally are on the road. They're on the road. So their over win total this year is at 3.5. And we'll talk about that. And we're rating them, of course, talking about them relative to what the expectations are. We'll give our picks, but honestly, I think this team is much better. And quite frankly, we'll talk about it with Jeff Lebby, but there were a lot of good things to see from his offense last year. Specific plays, schemes, and whatnot. You lose some talent in that wide receiver room, but getting Blake Shapen back at quarterback. Granted, Michael Van Buren I thought did awesome in, getting thrown out there as a true freshman just to the wolves, right? He moves on to go to LSU to be the backup quarterback for Nussmeier, eventually take the reins there. They get Luke Kromanoik as a transfer from Florida State. That's a guy that I know people believe was pretty talented as well, while he wasn't fantastic as a true freshman last year, given that quarterback nightmare of a team that they had over there. I mean, I think this isn't your typical SEC level talented team, but I think there's enough here where they can catch a team or two lacking in the SEC.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, too, with just the X factor that is Jeff Lebby. And we talked about it pretty extensively last offseason in terms of that we loved it. We thought it was awesome. And you saw that the proof maybe wasn't there in the 2-10, but like look big picture, look contextually what happened last season. You saw some flashes. You also saw what happened in Oklahoma and their offense. And so, like, count yourselves lucky that you have Jeff Lebby out there in Mississippi State. I think he also understood a couple different holes that they had in their roster. And attacked them in the portal. And it also supplemented with a couple key guys in that running back room, right? And like maybe the secondary where he could find guys that can play certain spots and roles for you that can overall help your balance too. And just get healthy too with Shapen. Obviously, it sucks watching Sawyer Robertson, vault his way into like Heisman conversations and first round, second round draft pick conversations. But Blake Shapen's fine, man. I think he's good enough to get it done. Looking at their schedule, which we'll talk about later on, but I don't think he's going to be the worst quarterback in every single one of your games this year, especially in the SEC. Like, I think you're going to have a couple games where he might be an edge for you, especially him plus Jeff Lebby and whatever else you're trotting out there at running back and the wide receiver skill position. So optimistic here for Mississippi State. Obviously, expectations aren't going to be super, super high. Let us know in the comments for you Mississippi State fans, our Bulldogs, like what do you want to see this year? Obviously, 10-2 and a playoff berth maybe not be realistic in year 2 of Lebby, but what do you want to see in terms of progressing and understanding that, okay, yes, we have the right guy here. We're building towards the future, and we're going to set ourselves up to succeed in 2026 and beyond.
I mean, Mississippi State, from an offensive perspective, and you can look at the numbers. You can look at standard down explosiveness and standard down success rate. They were the most explosive team per play in the SEC last year. The most explosive. More explosive than Ole Miss. More explosive than Florida. More explosive than Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Texas. They were more explosive. However, they were the worst team in the SEC in standard down success rate. And so that inconsistency doesn't keep you on the field to let your explosive plays. Like, the more plays you have with a high explosive rate, like there's more of a chance that you're going to have an explosive play in a big moment. And when you're, a bottom 5 team in the country in time of possession because you're just getting booted off the field 3 and out after 3 and out, negative play after negative play, it was tough sledding at times. So, like, you clean up some of that down-to-down consistency. Like, Jeff Lebby, dude, is a very good offensive coordinator. And I think he made some pretty key coaching additions as well that we'll talk about that I think are going to be an immediate boost for this team. But I guess if you want to go through the running back position, I mean, I think it's a good room. I think you got four guys that you feel pretty dang good about that have all seen the field to some degree, or guys that you just like a lot. Like, I mean, Fluff Bothwell. I mean, how many times did we talk about him last year? He comes in to this room and like, is he going to be a starter? I don't know. By the end of the season, it might just be the Fluff Bothwell show in that backfield. But you feel okay about Devon Booth as well. Like he did okay last year, I thought, coming from Utah State. This is going to be very interesting. I like this room.
Yeah, Booth and Daniels both averaged 5 yards per carry behind a bad offensive line last year, right? And obviously, you'll talk about some of the additions in on the offensive line as well as in that coaching room for that O-line group. But I expect this group to be a strength of this team this year. Not only do you have Booth, you have Bothwell, Daniels, guys coming back too. Seth Davis is there as well, a little different kind of body for you. But with Lebby, getting those playmakers on the field, getting them in space, putting them in the right positions with different run looks and schemes, like I think that's going to be a really fun time for you. I think you didn't need to go out and get Bothwell, right? Like I think you felt pretty good with Booth and Daniels and Davis, right? But I think the reality is like, why not? If you can, you've seen attrition hit your room before. You've seen attrition hit your team. It doesn't hurt to have, a couple different 1, 2, even a third punch there of guys that you feel really good that can be difference makers. Yeah, I like this group a lot. Sounds like Booth's also having a really good camp again, trying to follow up that year. It's also not going to hurt too, where you can keep guys fresh in that fourth quarter, especially you start to get to games later in that season that you're trying to win here. It would obviously helping to have a couple fresh legs in that room, especially in October, November, when you can't say that about a lot of teams in the SEC having fresh legs.
Also, thinking about Bothwell is like Booth is gone after this year.
Yeah.
Bothwell's, like he's got more eligibility, so he's not just a 2025 guy. He's a 2026 guy, maybe 2027 guy.
Probably.
Probably. So I like that a lot. The wide receiver room is what I think is getting a significant downgrade on this offense because Kevin Coleman last year was fantastic. All right, he was really good. Mario Craver battled some injuries last year. He only played 9 games is what I'm looking at. Mario Craver was really good. Kelly Akari, I thought was also a very good wide receiver. Those 3 guys are gone, and you're replacing it with Marcus Allen from Eastern Michigan, which do you feel great about? I don't know. Anthony Evans from Georgia. Brendan Thompson, who the staff is really high on, and he literally represented Mississippi State at SEC Media Days, so clearly making an impact in the locker room and to the coaching staff. And a guy that's, a bit smaller, but definitely a burner. Maybe he didn't get a fair look, with the quarterbacks that he played with, but yeah, Brendan Thompson is definitely an interesting one for sure. Cam Thompson, Aiden Williams. I mean, there are interesting bodies in this room. I don't know who's going to emerge as those top 3 or 4 guys. I got to believe Jordan Mosley's in there, right? I mean, he had 400 yards last year and 23 catches. He'll definitely be one of those guys that they use in this spot. But, I mean, I don't know. What do you think the outlook for this wide receiver room is? And, what does it mean to have a good season for this wide receiver room?
Yeah, obviously, I think you have a lot of bodies that you feel comfortable playing in the SEC, which I think is a great thing, considering, what happened. You losing, 3 of your better playmakers on offense last year, or maybe 3 of your best. I want to see Jordan Mosley come back and, take a big step. That's who I would love to see. Him be a guy that, really turns into the alpha of this room. And then you supplement with guys like Marcus Allen, like Jaron Glover, a guy that at one point had super high expectations from that Michigan State staff when he was there. Cam Thompson, a guy that's played a lot of football in his career. Obviously, Brendan Thompson, we know what he can do, taking the top off defense. So the fun part is you have a lot of different bodies. You have a lot of different skill sets in that room, which obviously, Lebby can mix and match and do his thing there, scheming open guys and having guys play certain roles. But I would love to see a go-to guy, a guy that on third down, you could just trust he's going to get open for you, and Shapen can put the ball on him and he can do that. I hope it's going to be Mosley, man. It sounds like he's having a really good camp. It's just last year of eligibility, right? So it's now or never for him. It sounds like he thinks he's playing some of the better football he's played in his career, which is a good sign for Mississippi State fans. And obviously Blake Shapen, because it hurts what you have to lose here. You'd love to have a guy like Craver. You'd love to have Coleman for another year. But it is what it is. I don't think the cupboard's bare. I just have some question marks about guys maybe 2 through 5 and what that order is going to fall into. And then who's like, how good is your one going to be? How good is Jordan Mosley going to be? So we'll see when we get there. But should be a fun group to watch and obviously monitor as we go through September to see how it outlooks in the SEC.
Yeah, and at tight end, I think you're going to be fine from a pass catching perspective. I mean, Traore was phenomenal for you last year. Anytime a tight end catches 30 plus balls in college football, like, okay, that guy's pretty solid. You brought in 2 transfers to kind of supplement that as well. So we'll see how that room shapes out like as a whole, but I feel pretty good about that spot, and this I think will be a pretty decent tight end room, but I don't want to spend too much time on that because the offensive line was abysmal last year. And what are you going to get this? Because in Mississippi State fans, maybe some of you are more confident than me in like trying to pick out like what 5 they're going to send out there. I don't know what they're going to do. What I do know, Phil Loadholt is coming over from Colorado as the offensive line coach. I think that is a fantastic hire. You saw that Colorado offensive line significantly get a bump when they brought him in and let him work and bring in some talent. He did a great job with that Colorado offensive line. As much hate as Colorado gets sometimes for their offensive line, like he significantly improved that room in 2024. That made Colorado like legitimately competitive, literally a game away from making the Big 12 championship. That's the kind of impact that he had on that offensive line. And he's worked with Lebby at Oklahoma, at Ole Miss, and at UCF. Like he's been there with him. Like they're familiar. They know exactly what to expect from each other. They know what the expectations are, what kind of guys that they need in this room. So, I mean, some of the transfers that you brought in 6, which is never a good sign, right? But you lose like 4 of your 5 starters from last year, which good riddance probably. Brendan Smith is a guy from UTEP that's played like over 2,000 snaps. I think Blake Steen from Virginia, if he's going to play tackle, I think he's pretty solid. At least I would project him to be the guy at right tackle. I don't know what that's going to look like for sure. Zach Owens is a name in that room that's coming over from Colorado that worked with Loadholt there. Luke Work is a guy that's getting a lot of buzz, like whether he's going to play guard or, be some sort of swing tackle kind of deal. Like Luke Work is a guy that you're looking at that's just a true sophomore that could be pretty solid. Javen Q. James, I mean, he could be pretty decent as well. I'm not expecting him to be amazing. I'm not expecting Trevor Mayberry to be amazing either. He was not fantastic at Stanford, but he's another body that you bring in there, Kobe Keenum. So, Jacoby Jackson was there last year. There are, I'd say, like 8 names of players, maybe 9.
Yeah, how about Jimothy Lewis too? It sounds like he's a guy, a young kid, looking at left tackle, former 4-star kid, played at IMG, originally won a state title in the state of Mississippi when he was a sophomore, which is pretty awesome. And he's obviously pretty high upside guy. It would be not concerning to trot out like a second-year guy and be a pretty young dude, but it'd be a fun spot to see what he could do with his upside.
Yeah, so a lot of projection here, a lot of hope. And the problem is like, I think those first 4 weeks you should go 3-0 or 3-1, right? But Tennessee, that's a game on your schedule that I think is quote unquote winnable. The spread may be double digits in that game, but you get them at home. If your offensive line hasn't figured it out by then, I'm sorry. Like, it might not happen for you. Fortunately, some of the more winnable games do come weeks 10, week 12, week 14, playing against Arkansas, Missouri, Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is significantly better than Missouri and Arkansas, but it's the Egg Bowl, right? You never know what's going to happen.
You're coming off a bye, too.
You're coming off of a bye, so it is nicer that, some of those games come later in the season, but at the same time, you're like, oh, well, are we going to see any sort of attrition, with like the gauntlet of a schedule that's going to be playing A&M's defensive line, Florida's defensive line, Texas's defensive line, and Georgia's defensive line in those weeks? Like,
all within a month. All within a month.
Within 4 of like the better defensive lines in the SEC, maybe in college football. That is going to potentially add up to some attrition at this level for this group. So this is a huge concern for Mississippi State, but I gotta believe it gets better, and I gotta believe in Phil Lodeholt and Jeff Lebby. So overall, we talk quarterback. You're getting a bump because Blake Shapen's getting back, and I think he's a pretty good quarterback, right? Just by what people say. Running back position, I think, gets better. Adding Fluff Bothwell, wide receiver, maybe. We'll see. I mean, you don't expect that to get better, but you never know with Jeff Lebby. Tight end, you're chilling, and then offensive line, you're hoping that gets a little bit better. So in general, like, this offense should be better, right? On paper, we'll see what ends up happening with these boys and like whether or not they can produce at the level. Start getting those down-to-down consistencies together instead of like just relying on those explosive plays that Jeff Lebby's dialing up. Defensively, boy, this was a pretty bad team defensively as well. I mean, I think teams ran the ball against Mississippi State more than anyone in the entire country except for like 2 teams. Because there were some blowout games, and also that defensive line was not very good. Stone Blanton held a lot of that front 7 together. And by the way, I don't even know how many teams, while he had a fantastic season last year, and I don't want to take anything away from him because we talked about him last year as being a significant transfer piece coming from South Carolina. How many teams in the SEC is like he a real impact for? How many teams in the SEC is he the best linebacker for? The answer is like, I don't know that he would be the best linebacker for more than 4 teams in the SEC this year. So I think you still got some names in that linebacker room. But yeah, the transfer portal definitely needs to work this time. The roulette is coming on this side of the ball. What is that? 7 transfers on the defensive line? Double-digit transfers in your front 7. And then a couple pieces in your secondary that you're looking at. Like, okay, all right, that's a good player. That's a good player. That's a good player. So I'm just hoping that this front 7 takes a step, and you still got Turner over there, coaching that D line, which you gotta believe that his ability to evaluate talent and develop players like is better than almost any coach in college football. Gotta take a step here, right? Have to.
Yeah, and obviously, like, real quick, just about the whole defense in general. When Isaac Smith, who's a very good player, right, but when he, as a safety, has 127 tackles, usually means that your front 7 is not doing their jobs, right? And hopefully you hope that gets better. They hit the portal hard. They got some impact guys that they expect to be big time contributors for them. I think guys with upside. I think guys that fill roles. I think that D line and like the jack linebacker spot too, you could throw in there. Like, I don't think it necessarily matters who's starting on like the first snap of that first game, right? But I think it's more about like the rotation and that you have guys that you feel good about rotating in and out. Like, for example, Malik Silla being a guy that I know you and I are both high, and we watched him at Texas A&M. We think he's a really good pass rusher. He might not start on 1st and 10 for you, but he's going to be a very, very valuable, important piece for you on that defensive line. And you trust David Turner to not only to be developing these guys in the offseason, but also like come up with a plan and a role for each of them to like maximize this room, especially after last year, some self scouting, all that kind of good stuff. Red Hibbler, you're bringing in at the defensive end spot. Will Whitston, right from Coastal Carolina inside. Trevin Williams is also there. And then you got your big boys up front, a couple different guys. Jamil Burrows, right? Gerard Bledsoe, a couple transfers you coming in. Calvin Dinkins, obviously, will be coming back if he can be healthy. That'd be awesome. But it sounds like you have a lot of bodies, right? That you like can rotate in and out, a couple different play styles, a couple different frames that you can hopefully get the most out of these guys because, and we'll get to it, the cornerback room could be something of a concern, and you could see them get potentially picked apart or like exposed because of maybe a lack of pass rush. You don't want those guys covering for longer than they have to. You can create some pressure. You can create some third and longs by stopping the run early on early downs. It can do wonders for your defense, especially in spots that you don't feel great about.
Yeah, I mean, the secondary last year was abysmal. I mean, the success rate that teams would have against Mississippi State, it's in a different tier than any other team in the SEC. Vanderbilt is, kind of close. It wasn't necessarily like people were having these huge 80-yard touchdowns against Mississippi State every other play. It was just like not being able to get off the field, on third down.
47%.
Yeah.
Come on.
I mean, that's brutal. That's brutal, right? And a lot of that has to do with your secondary. Secondary pieces not named Isaac Smith, right? But like you said, in that defensive line and linebacker room, that front seven, just do something. Like, just get bodies in there. I think you have more SEC bodies in this front seven than you maybe did a year ago. Yeah, I mean, from a pass rushing perspective, you talked about Malik Silla. I'm not super confident that they're going to have, great pass rush here, but again, I think we're grading and talking about Mississippi State on like a different scale than some of these other SEC teams. I think this will be improved, this front seven. The secondary, to move on, we talked about Isaac Smith. He's a stud. He'll be really good. NFL prospect, 4th-round grade. All right, cool. So what else do you have here? Jerron Manning comes over from Old Dominion. I don't know what they're going to use him as. I think he's an incredibly versatile piece. He has to find the field, right? Like, that was a guy that you got in the transfer portal that I think people were significantly sleeping on. A lot of impact plays over there at Old Dominion. Kind of came up from the JUCO ranks. He's, I guess, on the smaller side. I think he's still a really good impact player, and I think he can have a lot of success in the SEC. But then the cornerback room, what are we looking at, CD, over here in the cornerback room?
Yeah, so, I mean, you got guys who have experience, right? Kelly Jones, Diago Brumfield, guys that, have SEC experience. So I guess that's a solid there. Have they played well in the SEC? Not necessarily. I think, like I talked about with that front, like, I think if the whole defense gets better, I think those guys get better. I think cornerback's position, especially if you're not like an elite talent, like, first of all, it's really hard to play cornerback, right? But, if those guys, aren't elite, maybe you could see them get vulnerable, but I think they'll hopefully get better, more experience, better guys around them, right? And you also have, Dwight Lewis coming over, who's a guy that was a high prospect at some point, but he's also like making a big jump in competition level, right? Coming from D3 to the SEC. Elijah Cannon's a guy that got his feet wet last year. Hopefully you see him kind of start to pick it up a little bit. Jet Jefferson come from JUCO, another guy that, I think a couple guys that the coaching staff kind of feel okay about. I think the upside is a little concerning. I think the floor is a little concerning. I think there's a spot in that middle where you could get a couple of those guys overperforming and this room could be serviceable. And I think that's would be an awesome, spot for Mississippi State to be in. I think that's really all you can ask for right now. Obviously, who knows, right? We're just projecting here, but this is one that and I think Mississippi State fans do understand. This is a spot where We got to see it, man. We got to see it.
Yeah, so good luck to the secondary. I think Kelly Jones, if he ends up taking a jump, I think that would be so big. I mean, he's got the body and the length, and like he showed flashes. Just like if he takes a big jump, and Manning is playing a significant role, and Isaac Smith is doing Isaac Smith things, like that would be a pretty solid core there to have in your secondary. It's just like, can people fill in around that? And you know, I mean, the success rate on passing plays against Mississippi State's like it was ungodly. It was unholy, right? And we talked about Coleman Hutzler, like when he got hired, like that was a sneaky good hire in terms of like a good recruiter, like not super proven as a defensive coordinator, calling plays, but I still believe in him. I believe like in this coaching staff. I go up and down this list of names on this coaching staff, and I'm like, okay, Jeff Lebby, love him as an offensive, minded coach, and he's like their coordinator. He's gonna be calling plays. I like Coleman Hutzler. Like, you love Turner, you love Phil Lodeholt, and then how about you also bring in Vincent Dancy, who's the new defensive end outside linebacker coach.
Yeah.
You brought him in from Colorado, who was a top 10 team in sacks per game in college football last year, with like a team that brought in a bunch of pieces on the defensive line, and he made it work.
He did.
And guess what he's doing this year? He's bringing in a bunch of pieces on the defensive line, see if he can make it work. So, like, looking at this schedule.
Wait, real quick, can I say something about the defense? Lastly, and this comes with just overall production, starting from that front seven, especially those pass rushers, and then even on early downs, and then the secondary, your turnovers. Like, you need to create more turnovers, especially if you are going to be in these SEC games where you probably have less talent than other teams. You have to find ways to like change like massive win percentage swings, like in certain turnovers, third down stops, stuff like that. So like situationally, you got to be better. And then also like I said, with getting turnovers, you were like 110th in turnovers last year in the country. There's 130 some teams, right? So that needs to change because of what's coming here, and obviously like just the reality of what you're going to be if you're going to be in some of these games. Swing with Tennessee not having potentially an elite offense, whatever, like working in new quarterbacks, yada, yada, yada. Get turnovers, man. Produce like big time changing plays. And that'll be obviously your defense looks better when it doesn't have to be on the field all the time, because it was on the field for a lot last year.
So breaking down this win total 3.5, it is, I believe it's slightly juiced to the over. It's hard though for me to put money on the over, even though I feel better about this team than I did about this team last year. 3 wins, I think you have, in the Southern Miss, Alcorn, and NIU. But this SEC schedule, man, like, you don't get Kentucky, you don't get Vanderbilt, like 2 teams that you would love to see on your schedule if you're Mississippi State, and vice versa if you're Kentucky and Vanderbilt. You'd love to see Mississippi State on your schedule. But if you win those 3 out-of-conference games, assuming you lose to Arizona State at home, you just got to find one in the SEC. Does that come at, Tennessee at home? Do you go to Kyle Field and, stun them after you kind of gave them a tough game last year, at your home field? Arkansas, are you going to go into Fayetteville or Missouri? Are you going to go up there and do something? Ole Miss in the Egg Bowl? Are you going to... Any one of those games would cash you this win total. Not a bet for me, but I lean to the over, and it's just minus 160 now. I think that opened at minus 122, so not a ton of value out there right now for that, but yeah, I'll lean over. Am I saying that this is a bowl team? I don't think that they're making a bowl game this year, but I don't think that means you should give up on Jeff Lebby. 2 wins in the SEC normally means, unless your name is Vanderbilt, like you're gonna get fired. Like that's unacceptable in the SEC. Given what he had last year, like, come on, like, what was he supposed to do? Your starting quarterback goes down right away. you just don't have a roster that can compete. You had to bring in like 40 transfers in the portal. Like, come on. And I think this year it gets better. And I'm just hoping that this defense can kind of supplement and help out this offense, which I think will be a little bit more explosive and hopefully more consistent.
Yeah. I will say too that week 2 game at home, Starkville, you arguably could have won that game last year, right? Against a team that ended up going on to make the playoffs. And obviously they got super hot, right? So like that different team in September that Arizona State was versus the team that was, giving Texas all they could handle in that college football playoff game. I'm with you here on the over. What I'm looking at right now is it's pretty brutal odds. It's like minus 162 and over 3.5. So I'm not going to be putting anything on it. It's not something I feel great about anyways, even if it was pretty neutral odds. But I'm with you. I think they're going to steal one from somebody. Arizona State at one of the SEC games. Like I think that's going to happen. And that's part of that Jeff Lebby factor, I think, where he's just going to just be in his bag and like win that game Monday through Friday with his preparation and what they can do. And that's part of the excitement that is Jeff Lebby coming to your team. What do you think? What do you think gets Mississippi State fans like coming back for more from Lebby here in terms of win total or just other intangible things that you're seeing that just is showing that progress? Because like I could see it being frustrating watching your team maybe go winless in the SEC, maybe go one loss or one win or so. Like that could be really frustrating, and it probably should be, right? Like I know it sucks that you have a lot less resources than all the other teams you're playing in the SEC this year, but it's still frustrating as a fan, understanding that, given your support and money and time to this team. What do you want to see out of Mississippi State?
I think as a fan, right, you want them to make a bowl game, and if they don't, you're going to be really frustrated. But if it's because the defense, if the offense looks good this year, you shouldn't be upset at Jeff Lebby. Obviously, bringing in defensive talent is part of his job as well. But I mean, they are again double-digit guys that they're having to bring in the transfer portal in the front seven. Like at some point, hopefully, you can stabilize a little bit on that side of the ball. It may not happen this year, but if this defense is the reason that you're not winning games, I'm not upset. If your offense does not look good at all, pending, if they're all healthy and it just doesn't look good or explosive or, Blake Shapen's like struggling significantly. And I thought he played well in the first couple of games of the season last year. Then I'm like, okay, I'm asking questions a little bit, because like, is it going to get better, with Kromano at quarterback in the future? I don't know. So I think if the offense looks good this year or looks better, I think you're in a pretty good spot as a Mississippi State fan. But I think really that's the expectation, right? It should be, at least as a fan. Like, you shouldn't expect to make a bowl game, but you should still be upset, though, if you're not, right? Because it's tough, man. Sorry, Mississippi State fan. Like, what happened with Mike Leach, I mean, gosh, God rest his soul. That dude was amazing. And it just put your program in such a significantly terrible spot because you had to go into this year with Zach Arnett and he tried to reset this whole thing, bringing in a different offensive system, and it just like blew up on itself. And I mean, just
set you back.
Just set you back so far. And I think Jeff Lebby can be a guy to bring it back. Let's just let it happen. Mississippi State fans.
One game at a time. One game at a time.